Let's talk about XCX World. Now, before I begin, I'd like to say that there's already 2 other videos on YouTube about this topic, so definitely check those out. I think they're really well made and they make some good points. In this video, I will try not to repeat what those other videos said, and instead I will try to go a bit more in-depth about this album's production history and how it came together before falling apart. As you can tell by the title, this is part 1 of a 2-video series. I had to split it in 2 because the video was too long and YouTube wouldn't let me upload it. In this first part, I will cover the events of 2016, and then in part 2, I will cover the events of 2017, the leaking of the songs, my thoughts on that situation, and then towards the end, I will just talk about one song in particular and why I don't feel it should be included in the track list. And yeah, I hope maybe you learned something new today. I've spent a lot of time researching this video, so I will just shut up now and get it started. So I want to start off by showing you this document from 2015, allegedly. And it's basically some sort of cropped email that is discussing the future plans for an EP and an album. The EP, of course, refers to the Vroom Vroom EP that Charli released in February of 2016. And the album is what we all now know as XCX World, even though that was never its official title. This is the first document that I've found where we see the songs listed for the album in these early stages. This document seems pretty legit, and what's interesting about it is that we can see not only the song titles, but that the EP and the album were being planned simultaneously. So, as I mentioned, in February of 2016, the Vroom Vroom EP would officially get released, rewriting pop history forever, and receiving mixed critical reviews because, of course, Sophie and Charli were super ahead of their time. And then in March of 2016, Charli and Sophie performed at South by Southwest. Their set list included songs from the Vroom Vroom EP, also some Sophie songs, remixes, and then 2 songs which nobody had really heard before, which were Burn Rubber and Round and Round. Now moving on to April of 2016, we have this document which is called the XCX Manifesto, and it was allegedly written by A.G. Cook, who Charli had hired to be her creative director. Again, this document seems pretty legit, and it's a really interesting piece of this whole XCX World puzzle. The idea in the manifesto is that XCX will become some sort of mega brand. AG describes it as iconic, easy access, high level, shiny, but deep. He also says that the album should be called XCX because it's about Charli owning her brand and making an impact on a global scale. AG would later go on to suggest that Charli name her official 3rd studio album Charli, so this also sounds like a very AG thing. The document goes on to describe ideas for music videos or visuals, and one in particular kind of sticks out. It says, Charli's voice gets stolen and locked in a small bottle for other people to use at their will. Charli is mute, but goes on a mission to retrieve voice. In the process, she grows a new voice that is stronger than the one in the bottle. This fragment seems pretty ominous in hindsight, when you think about how this album really went through production hell and never got released. Lastly, at the bottom of the document, there is this idea for an app called XCX Yourself, which would be a combination of Shazam and Snapchat. And basically, whenever you heard one of Charli's songs from the album, you would open up the app and you'd be able to interact with the song in a particular way. It is a pretty interesting concept. I'm not sure if it would have worked, But yeah, they obviously wanted this to be like a product, a brand, an experience, and they had big plans for this era. Personally, I find this document to be really fascinating. I just love the way AG sees things in his mind. And then at the bottom of the document, we actually get two new song titles, which are Bounce and Daddy Knows. We'll now move forward to June of 2016, and we have this track list that Charli allegedly made herself. It is a rough draft of what the album might look like at this point. Basically, she just made this for her label and her management. We can see that the songs listed in the first email are all here, except for What You Waiting For / Hey Boy, Hey Girl. This rough track list is actually really interesting to me as well for a number of reasons. First, there's the fact that there are some song titles here that we will never really hear from again. And what's really interesting to me is the opening track and the closing track. One thing I know about Charli is that she's very particular about the opening track and the closing track. She puts a lot of thought into that. She doesn't really want to go for safe choices. And to me, it's just really crazy that she would put Bounce as the opening track. To me, this is like when she put Pink Diamond as the opening track for How I'm Feeling Now. You know, it's just a bold statement. And also, I Want to Be With You as the closing track is just genius as well. I think it's perfect, and I just love finding all these little pieces of the puzzle. Moving forward to July of 2016, we get to the Pop City show, which was a show that took place in LA, and Charli and also Carly Rae Jepsen were guest singers, and AG and Charli performed Bounce for the very first time. Bounce is really the only song that AG worked on for this album, and it just marks the beginning of a very fruitful creative partnership that still continues to this day. Moving forward to August of 2016, we get this article that was published by The Fader, and basically they interview Charli and she talks about her new album. She says she's working with Sophie and Stargate and Blood Pop. They also interview AG, and towards the end of the article, the journalist talks about some of the songs that they've been able to listen to and mentions two by name specifically, which are Good Girls and Come to My Party. Now it's October of 2016, and two things happen. Charli teases her lead single, which would be After the After Party, and she also says that the album is coming in May, so she finally has a release date. Then in November of 2016, Charli and Sophie play this iconic set at this event called 30 Days in LA, and people lose their minds because they basically play a bunch of songs that nobody has heard before. This is the first time that we actually hear Taxi, No Angel, Roll With Me, TKO. She also performs Daddy Knows, which, was included in those very early drafts and the manifesto, and Hey Boy, Hey Girl. Daddy Knows is an interesting part of this whole puzzle because Charli never actually recorded vocals for it, and I think at this point she knew she wasn't going to include it in the album, but she still performed it live for some reason. And Hey Boy, Hey Girl is actually a song with will.i.am, and the only reason that she performed it here was because will.i.am was going to show up, and that's the song that they had together, but in the end, he didn't show up and she just sang it solo. Charli later revealed that these songs were mostly just demos that they were never planning on releasing and they only played them for fun. Little did she know that she would be asked to play Taxi for the rest of her life. The only song that got an official release for a while was Roll With Me, which was included in her next project. And No Angel also became a really special track at this point. Sophie even introduced it at the show, and she talked about how much she loved this song. Here's when things start getting interesting. So last year in February of 2021, this user called Blackout Zone posted this on atrl.net. For some reason, this user has a lot of information about this album and what happened around this time. They are the ones who reveal that the tracklist from 2016 was just a rough sketch that Charli sent to her management. And in this same post, they reveal that by the end of 2016, mixing engineer Mark Spike Stent had been paid to mix 12 songs for Charli's new record. And then, for some reason, he would only end up mixing 9 songs. This user then goes on to reveal that this is exactly how the leak happened. Somehow, someone hacked or scammed this engineer for the stem files, and then these would be the songs that would leak a year later. From my research, this is the first time that these claims have been made, but if they are true, then they reveal that at this point, the album was almost finished, tracks had been picked and sent for mixing, and the label still had faith in this release. The part about the 3 tracks that were not sent for mixing is also interesting, and this is where we can speculate what those could be. I really don't think that Charli and her team actually knew which other songs they were going to send. They probably wanted to have more options in case they wanted to switch something out last minute, but I would say that Bounce was probably the most solid contender for one of those spots. In December of 2016, Charli talks about her album with Entertainment Weekly. She says that it's not quite finished yet. She also mentions a secret featuring artist, which we now know is Kyary Pamyu, who would feature on Bounce. This is probably the reason why the song was not sent for mixing yet, because they were probably still trying to get her vocals. And if you know anything about the leaks, there are multiple versions of Bounce out there with small variations. 2017 is when things really start going south for this project.